Innovate faster. So innovation, right? So what happens when a company goes from a Java Spring API to Lambda functions? Well, what takes place is that they're no longer worried about the CPU spikes that were bringing down their server. They're no longer worried about the cost of the servers that are running. They're focused now on, oh, hey, we're not spending this money here. We don't need to worry about these little details. We can just start rolling stuff out, right? And so unless you're backed and you're bankrolled by some $100 million company, or even 5 million, 10 million, or $1 billion company, if you're in a department like that, the cost of running the servers, it's a drop in the ocean. It doesn't matter too much, right? But if you're a smaller company or a medium-sized company, or you're on that verge of transitioning your gigantic company to serverless, once you make that transition and you have all this automation in place, and you have that CI/CD pipeline, and you're using, the serverless framework or Lambda functions, or if you're on GCP or Microsoft Azure, it's the same result, is that you're able to move much quicker. So the less overhead, that's one. The developer velocity, which we already mentioned, is another. And those two pieces together allow you to roll out new updates to certain features, to build things much quicker for your clients or for your customers. And you can measure things at a very granular level, right? So not only can you measure the cost at a granular level, but you can measure engagement. So how much, this was something that came up a while back, which people still aren't talking about. It was the idea of having, at some point in the future, you're going to have a cost engineer on your team, or somebody that's basically watching the Lambda function at that level, because you can take all of your individual Lambda functions and you can measure how much is this Lambda function making for our company. Yeah. This one specific isolated feature, how much is that making in dollars for the business? And so they were able to see that in this example, like it was kind of a hypothetical, but the function was costing them $15 per month, but the business value of it was like $25,000, $50,000 per month. And they were able to see that because they were able to track the traffic that's coming through that function, and then figure out what that relates to. So for instance, let's take an example where it's at Amazon.com, right? And it's selling products. If you're able to track let's say this one section of the website that's backed by one Lambda function, and those APIs that are running in the background are pretty slow. Well, because you can see that at a granular level, you can then see that this slowdown is causing customers to either A, not buy, or it's allowing them to have this delay, and those things have a business impact. And so this role in the future is this software engineer plus business mixed together to basically evaluate these little tiny these small features. And if you have that level of detail, what you can do is you can then optimize it and you can innovate on it. And so what I would say here is, imagine, what is an example for this to kind of compare and contrast, right? Let's take a server example, right? That server is running all of Amazon.com. So what you have is you have this gigantic black box, right? Where one request comes into it, and the second that it goes in, it's gone. Whereas the individual Lambda functions, it's it's like if you have ice cream and you have a bottle of sprinkles, each one of those sprinkles is a Lambda function. And you can take a single one of those sprinkles and you can analyze it, and you can figure out how much is this making, and you can also optimize it so that it's faster. And so you may be looking at your whole server and go, oh, the server is slow. Where is it slow? What is the line that's slow? And how do we make it faster? And what are the ways that we can do to optimize this one piece? And with serverless, it's broken apart to such a level that you can do that level of detail. And to me, that allows you to innovate insanely fast.
Yeah, and that sort of information is already being used in a very productive way. Like Google tells you that, if your website takes more than 10 seconds to load, you're losing 90% of your traffic. Like for every extra second, you're losing 20 or 30%. And so you want to get that as small as possible. But that's just on the user experience of the front end loading. Who knows what sort of information is packed behind the speed of certain parts of your website that's hooked up to different APIs and information that's getting passed, how much you're wasting. And now you don't even, if you're using a server, you don't even have the knowledge of how how much all of the server interactions are costing you.
Yes. Yeah, so that's another benefit. When we talk about servers and we think about how is this actually running the code, the thing that you have to remember is that some human is actually programming this. They're doing some like Linux scripting, or they're using like Docker scripting. There's some type of like package installation that's happening to configure the server to run your Node.js application, right? And so what happens is that fast forward 6 months, fast forward a year and a half, that Node.js version's out of date. Those packages are out of date. Now it's running less performant, and you have to have a human come in with a wrench and then fix the stuff. And the problem with that, or the benefit for serverless, is that you're leveraging the fact that millions of people are using Lambda, and those millions of people rely on AWS to provide the fastest possible compute for Node.js or for Python or for Go or for C Sharp, versus maybe you have a very experienced DevOps person that can build a server that's as fast. But I would say that's doubtful, to be honest, just because like AWS has thousands of engineers that are constantly trying to solve this problem for millions of customers. And the chance that they're going to get it right is extremely high because they have that huge financial incentive to make it that way. And that's because GCP, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure, or IBM are all competing for the exact same customers. And so they have this extreme precedence to make it as fast as possible. In which case, if you use their fully managed service instead of rolling your own, you're going to be in way better shape on a performance standpoint. And that's not even thinking about overhead.